done for me lately? It's Coons. What have y'all done for us lately? And if there's no answer, the only thing we owe them.
Welcome. It's Friday night, and usually I don't do much shows on Friday night, but it's Good Friday night and a special Friday night to have this particular guest on, and knowing that this is what we call the holiday season between Thanksgiving and New Year's. This is a season where a lot of us reunite or re-tie the ties of family, friends. It's the time where we gather. Just today, I was talking to a friend of mine and I was out and I was like, it's amazing how many people eat out, where we as Black people, we just believe in eating amongst family. Our family gatherings are always who's cooking, who's coming over. And this is the time where people talk about who's going to college, who's pregnant, who's having kids, who's about to buy a home. However, the tough side of that sometimes is when we lose people during this time of the year, or any time of the year. You really start to reflect on those memories during this time, because these times bring back a lot of memories of camaraderie with your family. Like I said, a lot of great memories happen during this time. Definitely, if a certain person knows how to make the potato salad just right, everybody loved that potato salad. Nobody could duplicate the potato salad, but that person isn't here. And these are some of the things which is, sometimes we take it for granted as Black people, these cultural things that we have until we start getting older, until people start moving on, that these are precious moments. A lot of the history is shared during the moments, family history, and so forth and so on. But anyway, I have a very good guest tonight, Aja, and she's here to share with us her experiences with dealing with grief. She is an author to be, book is due out shortly. And we have a bunch of questions that we're going to entertain, and she's going to explain to us about grief and dealing with grief and being able to understand that going through grief, you're never alone. You always have somebody may have went through the same thing. And one thing about grief, there's no correct way to go through.
Yeah.
So Aja's here, and we're going to have a conversation. We're thankful that the internet is working right now.
Good.
So, Aja, before we
Thank
even get into anything, how are you doing today?
I am so good today. And I want to say thank you for having me on your show. I can say, hey, I was on your show before anything, before my book is launched. So you are very special and you are very blessed. And I am very blessed to be here to talk about this. And today,
this isn't your first time, actually.
Well, to talk about my book and everything else. I know Dr. Short and I were on your show before, but I want to say thank you for reaching out to me. I just want to have a question. Does my lighting look okay? Because I changed the color.
Yeah, it looks fine. It looks
Okay.
fine.
Okay. Because different parts of my house are dark. So it's like,
What's funny is I actually do my show sometimes in the light, but I have a light sensitivity, and
okay.
I'm literally sitting in the dark, and the only thing that's on is my screen and my board, because of my light sensitivity. Sometimes
Okay. No worries.
I'm
But
glad you are well, good today, and
today was a very good day. And I will say that every day is different, especially during holiday season where, so a background with me in 2023, July 5th, my mother passed away with terminal cancer. He was diagnosed within 2 months and they weren't able to treat her. So she had to come home on hospice. Prior to that, our great uncle, my Uncle Fred, my grandmother's brother, he lived with us and cancer. And he passed away a year in 2022. Prior to that, my grandmother, who I lived with all of my life, me, my mom, and grandmother lived together since I was a baby. She died of cancer. Prior to that, my Uncle Artie, my mom's baby brother, and prior to that, my grandfather. So back to back to back, and then other family members. My Aunt Z, good friends, my cousin Elbert, my cousin Sterling, who lived with us. All this death, and a lot of good friends within the past 3 to 4 years around me died of cancer or different health issues. But the day that my mother died is when my life turned around because it was always me, my mom, and my grandmother all in one roof, no breaks. I didn't move out, come back a year later, or anything like that. We were a community. So when you were talking about holiday, my mom was the potato salad. Nobody else could make the potato salad but my mother. And I'm not saying hers was the best, but not because she was my mother. I can't even duplicate her potato salad. I'll have to continue to practice and practice. Same thing for New Year's. My grandmother's from Louisiana. She made the gumbo. We had gumbo, hot water cornbread, black eyed peas, every Thanksgiving, Christmas, holidays. We were the house to come to because my mom and grandmother, I was like the assistant chef, like the sous chef and the taster and the one who went to the store, but they did majority all the cooking. So when you were talking about coming together as family, even when we ate, we had people over, or then after we ate, we went to LA and we visited other family members. And it's always been a huge thing within my family for every holiday. Or people come out here too and eat with us. So when we deal with holidays, I could be okay during the year, but as after when October hits or September, I'm like, oh my God, now I'm really by myself, me and my two little dogs. And just FYI, if my little Yorkie starts barking, I have to go on mute because she's neighborhood watch and she's looking outside. So my other dog, he's asleep. But when we start to realize that our elders, our parents, our grandparents, our loved ones, even people's siblings, people I know who lost brothers and sisters, in your whole entire family, and I'm talking about immediate family, starts to shrink and shrink and shrink, and you're just like, what do I do? And this will be the second year. The first year, that year was extremely hard for me. I just cried. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to go anywhere. I just cried. I don't even know what I ate. I think a friend of mine brought a plate over, and I didn't even want to eat that because I'm like, this ain't my mama's cooking. This ain't my grandma's cooking. Not that it was bad food, but this ain't my mama's cooking or my grandma's cooking. I mean, I did pick on it, but it wasn't the same. Same thing with Christmas. I was able to say, okay, let me make a little something to eat, but it still wasn't the same. Last year was a little bit better. And then this past Thanksgiving, I said, you know what? I'm going to go to the store, get me a small little turkey, get me the trimmings. It wasn't the same, but I said, okay, I'm going to make the best of it this year for me, Fanny, and Coco. Those are my dogs. And so for Christmas, I'm going to be with my great aunt, who is 91 years old. So I'm going to be around family. But that first year, and I tell everybody, when you lose your mother, I mean, my dad's passed away too, and my older brother. But when you lose your mother, that is a unreal feeling. I woke up at 5:30 in the morning, the day after 4th of July, and my mother was not breathing.
Mm.
And I immediately called 911. The hospice nurse, she was already coming that day. And I immediately called 911. I had four dogs at the time. They're running around. I'm panicking. And the lady said, I need you to stay focused. Put your hand by her heart and start pumping. And she says, the door open. I said, no. I ran. The room is like not that far from the front door. It's the downstairs room. And I unlocked the door and I rushed back in and I kept pumping my mom's chest. And I heard the paramedics and they came. I told them, come right in. My dogs don't bite, they're little dogs. And they came right in. And another guy, he was a firefighter and he was really sweet. He put my dogs up in the back for me. And they told me, let's work on your mom. And I sat on the stairs so I could see inside the room. And then I finally went to go sit on the couch. And one of the firefighters came over to me and said, I'm sorry. Your mother's gone. And I said, no, she had a thing because she was on the hospice to resuscitate. And they said, no, sweetheart, she's been gone for a little bit. We can't resuscitate her. And right then the hospice nurse came in and we have a family friend, John, and he was on our emergency contact. He lives down the street and he came over right away. And so, hospice nurse and the fire department, they talk. And so when you're on hospice, and hospice takes over after you pass. And so the nurse did call John and said, and of course the police had to come over because they have to make sure there was nothing. That's just part of their job.
Yeah.
And so John called my aunt because we had a list and a protocol. And right then I said, my mother's never coming back. So for 44 years, that time I was 44 years old when my mother died. My life ended and began. 44 years with my mom and my grandmother because my parents got divorced when I was a baby, and my mom moved back home and never left. So 44 years of three beautiful women, they were gone. My mother was only 6 years old when she was diagnosed with cancer, stage 4. And the hospital said they didn't know where the cancer originated. And they were really trying to find if she had pancreatic cancer or lung cancer. But because she had a lot of fluid in her lungs, all over her body, and she just started to deteriorate, they told me after the 3rd hospital trip that it's best to put her on hospice.
Mm.
But going backwards, when my grandmother got sick, she was 89, and my grandmother accepted death. She said, I lived my life. And it was me, my mom, my grandmother, and my Uncle Fred. So we were all worked as a team. So a week prior to my grandmother passing, she called me in her room and she said, Muffet, that's my family nickname, Muffet. I'm shutting down and you're going to wake up one day and I'm not going to be here. And I said, that ain't going to happen. And soon enough, a week later, she passed. But she already accepted to go. Same thing with my Uncle Fred. He started out with dementia and then he started losing a lot of weight. So now it's just me, my mom, and Uncle Fred. And then my mom was a retired nurse and so was my grandmother, just FYI. She got him into the doctor and they said his cancer came back. So he started to deteriorate a little bit more faster too, where the cancer metastasized to his bones. And my mom and I, we were and he was on hospice here too. So was my grandmother. And he ended up being bedridden. And so my mom was his primary caregiver and I was the alternate plus the hospice. And he just went down to bone where he couldn't move anymore. He couldn't eat anymore. So then finally his hospice nurse came, Miss Lulu, took care of my grandmother. And she said, it's time. And I'm thinking, time for what? She said, he's gone. And that was the first time I've ever seen anybody, not even my mother or my grandmother or anybody, a human being, to take their last breath. I said, wow. But it was a very peaceful moment, and Uncle Fred accepted. He said, I'm going to watch over you girls, and I love you guys very much for taking care of me. So now it's just me and my mom and our little dogs. And one day my mom, she was having problems breathing. And I said, let's go to the doctor. Let's go to the hospital. Let me tell you, doctors and nurses make the worst patients. They really do. And they admit it too.
Grandmother was an RN.
Yeah, and they admit it too. We're the worst patients. So this went on for a few months until one day I heard her banging on her bedroom wall. And I said, what's going on? And she's like, and so I called 911. And so long story short, they came right away. She had a big team of doctors in the ER. And I'm like, wow, this is serious. So they said she had fluids in her lung where it shifted her heart. It was hard to find. They had to put drain tubes. And so they said, we're going to keep her in for about a week. But the third day she said, are you coming up? And I said, yeah. She said, come now because oncology's here. I said, oh, okay. And they said, your mother has cancer. And I'm thinking like maybe stage 1, stage 2, or stage 3, stage 4. So the fighter I am, because my
Let me ask
grandma.
you, let me ask you a question. And I always ask this when I talk to anybody about cancer. When you heard stage 4, did you realize, oh crap, this is serious?
No, the way that my mom and grandmother educated me, because they were both nurses, they said, I want to talk to another doctor. Keep advocating. Because not to say that that wasn't true, I want to hear it from another doctor. And I want other tests done. Because my mom, she was kind of in and out. And she kept pointing like, please listen to my daughter. Because even my mom was in shock. And so they said, okay, we're going to retest again. It's going to take like a few days or maybe a day. And I said, okay. Went back up. It is stage 4. And this was the head of oncology. Because I said, I'm not taking your word. I want to hear it from another doctor with another test. And I always tell people, don't take that first diagnosis. I was taught that way. Ask for another one or another doctor. Oh, so then I called all the family because my mom was still in the hospital. And she went back and forth quite a bit within a month because of the fluids in her chest. So that's when they told me there's nothing else they can do for her. Not even a treatment. My mother, she was able to eat, but then she wasn't able to. So what the hospice nurse and I did, because hospice covered the insure, the insure in the bottle. So my mother was very big on like sherbets and ice creams and puddings. So I will make her an insure smoothie with sherbet. And she loved it. Pudding. She loved her pudding. Same thing with Uncle Fred. We had to feed him because the bone cancer, he couldn't lift up anymore. And this made her comfortable. But I prayed and prayed. But one thing my mother told me before she got diagnosed, my mother was a real woman of God. She came in my room earlier that year and she said, it's strange. She said, I was told to come in here to tell you you were entering your Job season. The book of Job. I didn't get it. I didn't realize it. Everything started happening. So when my mother died, hospice was gone. My family was gone because they came out. I was alone. I went in her room and got her Bible, and the bookmark was in Job. And it didn't really stick to me until a few months later. I said, let me keep rereading Job. And even when my mother could still talk, she said, have you read Job? Have you read Job? I didn't. But I said, yeah. But I really didn't. She said, read Job. She kept saying it, read Job. She said, no matter what, just keep praising God. So when it comes to grief in your immediate household, I tell everybody, read the book of Job. It hurts. You saw I was crying. Cry. Cry. But what I also do to rejoice and to praise and to sing, I play. My mother loved music. She did listen to a lot of gospel music. Aretha Franklin's gospel album. I play that. Christmas music, everything. This year I have kept my house alive.
Did you let me ask you, because I know that, one of the most crucial times is immediately after they move on.
Yeah.
And you start to, like you said, you start to realize, like,
They're not
I'm in
coming back.
this house by myself. They're not coming back. I'm not waking up from this dream, even though it's not a dream. This is reality. When did you realize, okay, Aja, even though you're still grieving, it's time to start picking up the pieces and picking up the pieces. And I mean this, and I question this in a way of not acting like it didn't happen, but realizing that now, Aja, this is, like you said, the old Aja, the daughter, was no longer.
No. That's
Now,
perfectly said. That is so perfectly said.
yeah. When did you realize that? What clicked in you? What like, when did that light go off?
I kept getting darker and darker. Everything was just so dark around me. And I do talk about this in my book. I wanted to check out. I had wrote everything down. And I had 3 dogs. I said, don't take them to the shelter. Here's the rescue group. And I cried for a week. And I said, I can't take this pain. And I just kept crying to God until I was crying so hard where I did feel the Holy Spirit and say, it's time to go ask for some help. And I called the Veteran Suicide Hotline.
Mm.
And it was a really nice gentleman who let me cry and tell him everything. And he said, I can get a team to come to your house right now and pick you up to admit you. I said, I have nobody to take care of my little dogs. I had to think of my little babies. He said, okay. He said, how about this? All right, can you calm down for me? I said, getting it. He said, do you have any weapons in the house? I said, nope. He said, I want you to lay down, and I put everything in, and I'm going to have the medical team contact you early in the morning because you are now high alert. And they did. They contacted me about 7 in the morning to do it on the phone intake. And that's where I started my mental health treatment through the VA. They put me in a beautiful grief group, another group, a women's group, and then I had a one-on-one with my psychiatrist.
So let me ask you now, prior to this, I know you have extensive military experience. Military's been all throughout your family. Your grandfather, Tuskegee Airman.
My grandfather was a chief, master sergeant. He fought 3 wars. Then my great uncle was a Tuskegee Airman. My grandmother served in the Air Force. My great aunt was a lieutenant colonel. She was a doctor. Many military family on both my mom and dad's side.
So let me ask you, right? Because we always hear these things about the VA. I grew up not far from a VA hospital. I actually live in a town that has a VA hospital that's very popular in this particular area of the country. And we always hear bad stories about how they treat the veterans. And was this your first experience of using the VA for any resources?
Yes. My first ever time. Now, so when I was going through intake, they said, "Oh, do you have your veterans benefits and stuff?" I said, "No." They said, "Okay, let's get you started to get your VA benefits." Okay, so the treatment for me was great. The support team, the doctors, my groups, everything. But now I'm dealing with to get my monthly benefits. If you go through my Substack, you'll see I was writing like, okay, I'm dead broke. My house is going to foreclosure. I have no money. And you guys, what really got me with them when they said, "Well, we can't find your military record." How? So, long story short, I might write a whole nother book on that. I said, okay, I got to put on Sergeant Smith's hat, my boots, everything, because now y'all are really ticking me off. I'm broke. And so I had to file a congressional complaint. Dr. Short was helping me with the connections he knew. And then they said, "Well, we can't find a unit that you're claiming for this." I said, "Oh, hold on. Because I was a personnel security manager. And guess what? I still had a copy of my own background investigation. And trust me, Q, I tore this whole house up. It took me about 2 days. But I can hear my mother and everybody said, "Look in that room, look in that folder." And I'm like, okay, I know I'm not schizophrenic or anything, but I'm listening to like, look here, look there, look there, look there. So finally, I'm looking through all my room. I'm looking into the other bedroom because that's like the quote unquote office. And then I was like, I didn't check this downstairs room. I knew we brought some boxes downstairs. So I'm digging through that and I'm like, where's my security package? So I went back on the couch. Me and Miss Fanny looked at each other. And then she went into the room. I think it was a sign. Thank God was like, go back in there. She'll follow you. And I saw a blue folder just like stuck in a little crack. I pulled out that blue folder. There goes my security package. There's my units. There's my deployment. You cannot lie on the security package. I had a top secret. Okay. Can't lie on it. So I scanned it in. I messaged them. I said, here is everything. You cannot lie on this. Okay. Still, so finally, another doctor lady did another eval on me. And so she said, okay. She said, I see this has been going on way too long. We're really going to expedite you. Yeah, I'm broke. So God told me, do not call these people for a week or 5 or 4 days. Because I was calling them every single day. What's my status? What's my status? So finally, I got that nudge. Call them. I got my VA. I got my VA benefits. Now I'm fighting them again for my increase. So it's a constant battle to fight for what you went through, what you earned. And I tell everybody, do not let it slack and don't give up on that.
So with all that, you got this going on. You got the freshness of mom's passing going on. You're starting to pick your pieces back together. And I'm quite sure that, because I've been through certain experiences in life as well. that sometimes when you get resistance and you know that you're a fighter, these situations actually may turn into purpose.
And that's
And
what happened.
I got purpose.
And I was telling this to my one-on-one doctor. She's amazing. And she said, Aja, you need to really write a book. I was like, I don't know. I'm just trying to get my life back together. Now I got some money coming in, not a whole lot like it used to be, but I'm way further than what I used to be. Now I'm like, okay, I'm okay. And I'm working to be much better. But then I kept, even my cousin, my oldest cousin, she's the oldest in the family. She's been through things because she took care of her mom majority of all her life. My Aunt Z, she passed, but she said, you've been through way more than anybody I've been through, that I know that's been through. She said, you should write a book. I'm like, I don't know. We'll see. And I kept hearing this when I tell people my story and everything. They're like, write a book. So finally I said, okay, I'm going to write Faith and Perseverance, because they have to go together. You can have all the faith in the world, but if you're not fighting, if you're not putting that into works, God wants to see you work. And when God saw me going through here, he was like, okay, I see this girl getting it back. She's coming back. I see Miss Hawkins and Miss Smith, Bunny and Deborah. That's my mom and they got a fighter. She's coming back to who she was. But now I'm fighting for me. All my life, my mother and grandmother were my cheerleaders. They would pray over me. They would help me fight. They would do everything. But now my whole reliance is with God. I don't have my mother and grandmother saying, who do we call? What do you want us to do? We're going to help you fight, or anything like that. Now it's just me and God. God and me. Till this day. I now wake up early. I wake up at 6 a.m. and I have a purpose every single day. And I was writing. Now I'm back into school. The VA pays for my school. I said, I have to fight. Now, do I take breaks? Breaks, not slacking. Just a break, yes.
We were talking about that, but we were talking about that before we went live. Like, yo, if you're living in today's world, and this is for everybody in the chat that's watching, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to unplug.
No.
One of a good friend of mine, and he does podcasting as well, does YouTube channel. We disagree on a lot of stuff. He was a major for communications in college. We disagree on a lot of stuff, but I look up to him as a mentor. And hopefully one day I'll bring him on the show. He, in marketing, when he was in college, he would always come home and give the younger guys like myself some information. And he had recommended a book a while ago. It's called Over-Consuming Yourselves.
Oh.
And I say that in retrospect to what I just said about, we don't realize that sometimes we need to take a break.
Yes.
Unplug, because when you think about it, you are being programmed every day. The minute you turn on the TV, the radio, every tool that you have. So prior to our show, me and Aja was talking about I took a break, but even before the show, you guys, I didn't have no internet service for about 3 hours. And I was just sitting in the living room, just sitting there. I was on the phone, but I was just sitting there, and you'd be amazed at how many things that you use, vices, phones, computers, stuff like that, where you're consumed by what you see, hear, take. So don't be afraid to take a break. I just explaining how in her journey, hey, I'm taking a break.
I had to. I had to learn to say, okay, I have to breathe. And trust me, adversary still comes at me. I'm still fighting for other things. But I learned how to say, I will I will turn off everything in my house. TV, whatever sound, everything in my house. And I would just sit there and I said, I have to listen to God. He'll tell me to move. He'll tell me to stay still. He'll tell me to be quiet. He'll tell me, oh, go cut some roses in the backyard. Go take Fanny for a walk. And then I kid you not, when you start listening to God, and I mean, you will know when God is talking to you in the moment of silence. Okay, I need you to go do this. And when you do this, it happens. Or I need you to pivot. And I pivoted so many times in my life. But I said, this is a time where I want to tell my story. I want to help other people to understand it's God's time, not your time. There's so many other things. I said, I'll reminisce things back in the day or talk to Dr. Short about things back in the day. But now it's time for me to move forward. It's time for me to say, now it's just me. I don't have my mother. I don't have my grandmother. I don't have no one in my household. It's just me.
So
And I'll admit, sometimes it's like I look at my dogs and they look at me and they're like, okay, we're tired of looking at you. They're like, lady, I know where to go. I'm like, no. I go take a walk. I go talk to my neighbors. I keep myself occupied on positive things. I keep up to date with everything too, but I said, now let me take a break from social media and let me go relax. Let me do some things around my house. Let me think about what I'm going to write next for my Substack. It's so much, writing is so therapeutic. It really is.
So when you realize, like, our book could be not only just a memoir of what I went through, but to be able to help one person.
One person.
How was that? How was that when in writing? Like, yo, I think I could really help somebody, or I'm really getting a lot out of my own by writing. I'm learning and I'm discovering about myself.
It goes back to my military career. I had a very, very sweet young lady. And still today, we're friends on Facebook. We keep in touch. She tells everybody, if it wasn't for Sergeant Smith mentoring me, and then when she first came to the unit, she came on a weekday. So my boss was like, hey, help her in process show around the base. Okay. Very sweet young lady. And as I got to know her, she always asked me questions, and she said she wanted to get into the medical program because she wanted to be a nurse. So I said, oh, my grandma's a nurse. My mom's a nurse. And so I would ask them, what should I tell her? So I helped her get into the Loma Linda nursing program. And she got into that. And so when she invited me to her graduation, she became an RN. I cried. I was like, this is my baby because she's younger than me, like a little sister, And so next thing you know it, of course, I got out, I moved on. And so she found me on Facebook and she said, guess what? And I said, what? She said, I'm going for the PA program, physician's assistant. She said, if it wasn't for you pushing me, that one young girl pushing me, I would have never done this program. So I made now she's like working on her PhD, all this great things in the medical field. And she tells everybody what I told her, and she's helping other young girls, other young ladies. So if you can make one impact on one person, no, trust me, I've helped other people too. But her, I made sure she was on a straight line, everything else when she came into the unit. Now, don't get me wrong, I mentored other people too, and they all gave me accolades, but daily, Sergeant Daly, I really took her underneath my wing.
Do you think
She implied she used everything that I taught her for other people too. So my one impact with her is now multiplied to many, many, many other people connected to her and connected to them. So my book, to impact one person and read it and listen and read the Bible scriptures that I put in my book, will help other people as well as a domino effect. I do believe in that. I do believe in that.
Let me ask you about your some of your military experience. When you decided it's over, put my time in. Did you feel like that's who you were? And you like, okay, I put my time in. Sergeant Smith is over with. That was a different phase in my life. But at the end of the day, to those people that were under you, you will always be Sergeant Smith.
Always say, it's so funny. Somebody found me on LinkedIn. They say, "Hey, Sergeant Smith, how you doing?" I will always be Sergeant Smith. Everybody, even the people who were above me in rank, in my grief group, I saw one of my old supervisors because her husband had passed away. And she was shocked to hear about my mother because she knew her. I mean, we all know each other. And I said, "Hello, senior." She's like, "Sergeant Smith." And of course, everybody was like, "You guys know her?" Yeah, she was one of my supervisors and one of my mentors. And here we are both in grief. But it was so cute. She said, "You can call me Rhonda, Sergeant Smith." I said, "Okay, Senior Sumlar." And it's a camaraderie. It's a family where you never lose your rank. When I die, my rank will be on my headstone. When I die. Same with my grandfathers and everybody else, even when I die, it will say Tech Sergeant Aja Smith. So it will always be in me, and I'm proud of it. Because when my mother died, when my mother went to the Lord, I had to finally take control back of my life and be Sergeant Smith again. But not only Sergeant Smith, I had to be Bunny's granddaughter. I had to be Deborah's daughter. The two women who really taught me how to fight.
Do you have those visions even to today where, like you said, you'll be doing something casual and be like, you hear your grandmother's voice like, "I told you to do such and such," and then you're just like, and then you ask yourself like, "Damn, am I acting like my mother? Like I'm doing the same thing she's doing." Like, how does those moments? What do those moments do for you when you feel them, when you have them?
Now I laugh. I laugh. It was something funny that happened here maybe like 2 weeks ago. And I was like, I can hear my mother laughing. It was something silly I did, like personally at home. I can't remember, but I said, I can hear my mother. I can hear, I can feel it. I can't hear, I can feel it. You know, It's like I said, my mom and grandmother were the cooks. So now I'm like, okay, I'm not cooking like how they did because I would be gaining a whole bunch of weight. So it's just me. So I make my little dinner and stuff, and I start playing music, and I could really feel my mother saying, "Look at Muffet in the kitchen."
What are you trying to do?
I was just, yeah, like, what's she trying to cook? I could really feel my mom, and I could feel my grandmother. Like they're just like, look at her in the kitchen. Because, like I said, I was sous chef, and I was the one who went to the store, and I was the taster. My job was to set the table and clean the dishes. Now, trust me, I saw how they made different dishes and things like that, but I know it will not be to their, especially my grandmother's cornbread dressing. It's like, that was a process. One day, but it's just me. But anything, like when I was making my little Thanksgiving meal, whatever I was cooking up, I was like, it's just me. I'm eating it. I like it. I'm not hungry. I get to feel my mother laughing, like, look at her in the kitchen, thinking she could cook.
Do you think that those lessons that your grandma and your mom gave you, when you look back at it now, the lessons that they taught you, did they prepare you for this moment?
Yes and no. I was not prepared for my mom to die that suddenly and quickly. Like I said, my mother was a very big woman of God. But I looked back, my mom was afraid to die. As she started to deteriorate more, she would cry. And she said, "Can you just leave me alone?" And I respected it. My grandmother prepared me many times. My grandmother was a realist. She did not sugarcoat anything. I remember, as far as I can remember, even as a little girl, she said, "Muffet, I just want to let you know I won't be here forever." So that always, you remember Stanford the Son, where he said, "I'm having a heart attack." That was my grandmother. "I'm having a heart attack. It was like, okay. Every day she was having a heart attack. It was like, okay. But she was very real. My grandmother did not sugarcoat. When she didn't feel well, and her health started to decline. But that day when she called me into her room and said, "I'm dying," she wanted to make sure I realized that when you saw my grandmother, you saw me. We were two peas in a pod. We were more alike. My mother and my grandmother were the yin and the yang. I hope that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the middle, but it was always my grandmother. We come in your house, it's me. We go to the store, we're together. We go, not that my mom and I, we didn't do anything together, but my grandmother at that time growing up, she worked like the night shift and my mom worked the day shift. So during the day, my grandma, we went everywhere. I mean, even when we lived in LA, pick and save, we had a garden, the community garden. When we lived in Carson, we go to Compton, we go here, we go there, anywhere. You always saw me and my grandma. And my mom worked during the day, my grandma worked at night. But she wasn't a big sleeper. She was like 4 hours of sleep, she's up. So preparing to fight, yes. It took me a while to say, I have to fight. I have to fight. they both taught me, especially my grandmother. She said, never take no as an answer. Don't let anybody tell you something different. You have to fight. And in the military, I had to fight. I had to fight for myself. I had to fight for other people. I know regulations. I will research something so detailed. If I know that you are BSing me, I will tell you that and give you the quote from a regulation. Or research, and I will call you out politely. And that's how I was raised. But to prepare me with my mother going, that part was unexpected, not only with me, but the rest of my family. Because my mother was never sick. She's never been in a hospital. She's never had like a heart attack or stroke or anything, or I have to go to surgery, none of that. My mom, only time she was in the hospital was having me. Everything she went through, like even sick, maybe she went to the emergency once to get antibiotics. Even we experienced COVID. I had COVID, my mom had COVID, Uncle Fred had COVID, and my mom said, I am not going into the hospital because she knew what we were doing in the hospital. So we wrote out COVID except for Uncle Fred. We had to rush him to the hospital, and he pulled through. But preparing to fight, yes. But preparing for my mother's death, no. My mom was 66 years old. Her big plan was, I'm going to travel. I'm going to live for me. And I was even starting to help her, get her birth certificate and everything because she needed a passport. She wanted to go on a cruise. She wanted to do this, but she just kept getting sick. And she said, oh, I said, let me take you to the hospital. No. And so that did not prepare me because I thought my mom was going to live till in her 80s or 90s. We would be here together, and she's making her pound cake right now. Oh, my mother could make a pound cake. I'm not saying it because she's my mama. Everybody tell you Dee Dee could make a pound cake. Even my Aunt Barbara, she said, what's your mother's? She said, oh, I was thinking about your mother's pound cake. Or she make a whiskey nut cake with her Seagram 7. You getting drunk off a cake. And her tea cakes. And we're more decorating. My mother's death, I was not prepared.
So,
but I learned from it. Because life at any given moment will throw you a curveball. And you have to learn how to adapt. It may take you may do it quickly, or it's taking me 2 years. Some people may take 5 years. Some people may take 10 years. But I had to learn to say, okay, let me get back into a routine for my own health, my own mental health. Let me get up. Let me put on clothes. Let me do my hair. Let me start going back to the basics and how I was raised. And it's taken me 2 years. And everybody is different with that. And that's okay. That's okay. Well, I know people, I had an old boss, his mother died and then his dad died like 2 months later and he back to work like nothing happened. I'm like, but everybody is different. Like literally his mother died and then 2 months later his dad died and we're like, are you okay? I'm fine. We're like, okay. And everybody handles grief so differently. Everybody does. I remember when my mom died, we had a Shih Tzu named Charlie. He died, and then the week after, one of my great aunts died. So we had 2 deaths and 2 funerals in our family back to back. My aunt Sheila, she was sick, she was old, she passed away. But everybody will say, "I can't believe Dee Dee's gone." Even at my aunt Sheila's funeral, people were like, "How are you holding up?" But I wasn't. I just had a funeral for my mother, but I'm being strong for Uncle Billy. That's my uncle. And and Sheila, she was very sweet. And then that following year, that same year, my other dog died. And that's where I lost it. I'm like, oh Lord, what is going on? Did I do something? Do I need to repent more? What's going on in here? But I go back to what my mother told me prior to being diagnosed. I'm in my Job season. Because what did God do? He tested Job's faith.
So you know what that means now.
I don't know how long I'm going to be in the season. But at the end, when God said, wow, Job is really my faithful servant. And he gave Job twice as much. Job did not get his family back. They were gone. But he still blessed him with even more. And I tell people, find scripture that relates, that you can look at, that you can recite, that you can really research and understand. And of course, other scriptures in the Bible. Philippians 4:19, I recite every single day. Every single day. I think about it every single day. Ephesians 3:20, I think about it every single day. I look back at Job. I look back at Esther. I look back at Ruth every single day. And I tell people, God's promise is here. I had to learn patience, real patience. Because before that, I was an impatient person. That was that military in me. Like, you told me 6 o'clock and it's 6:01, you late. But every grief, I'm telling you, every grief, does it still hurt? I want to smell the aromas again. And I said next year I'll bake. Next year I'll bake. It's baby steps.
My grandparents, their home, right? Their home, they had a pine tree. Like, it would smell as soon as you start walking on the walkway.
We used to have pine tree.
So my grandfather passed away during COVID.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In Florida, 6 months ago, I smelled a pine tree at work. So I went on Facebook, inboxed my aunt and told her, I said, I smelled a pine tree. I said, instantly brought back memories.
Yes.
She was like, wow. And we always share little, very little things that really, really will trigger you to bring you back to remembering my grandparents, which is my aunt's parents. And it's just amazing how I asked you the question, did they prepare you for the moment for a reason? Because sometimes dealing with that faith, you never know how strong your faith truly is.
Yes.
It gets tested. And then it's like, oh, I'm not as strong as I thought I was. or I'm able to bear more in regards to this situation. It's it's truly amazing. Like you said, the hurt doesn't go away, the grief doesn't go away. You know, I talked to one of my close friends. We talk about grief. We always share like, yo, grief. And definitely, in today's world, nobody is supposed to show their emotion, but
Right.
grief has no explanation. You can grieve somebody until you're gone, and
Yeah.
it's okay. It's truly okay. But Aja, would you like to give us something before we close out to go with?
Yes. I want to say this, having this conversation with you, and to everybody who's watching, who's going to watch, this has been a big blessing to even express verbally, not on paper, but verbally, about my experience about grief and losing your loved ones. It's hard during the holiday season. It really, really is. Like I said, I just got 2 dogs here. You know, so when you're living at home for 44 years to now you're just you and your 2 dogs, it's hard. It's hard because I remember that next day after my mom passed, I made a full pot of coffee. And I'm like, because I'm used to making the full pot for everybody in the house. Even after my grandma died, we had my Uncle Fred, and then even with my mom, you know, we made a good half of, but I made a full pot of coffee. I'm like, I can't drink all this coffee. So changing patterns took me a while. Changing some routines for just me took a while. It was times where our family friend, he came over a lot and he said, "Have you eaten?" No, I didn't eat for like 2 days. I'll take a bite of something, like I don't want it. So now it's getting back to, I won't say normalcy. It's getting to get to know myself. It's getting to know, okay, this is where you're leading me, Lord, um, to help other people, to help people find a way to move forward, not rushing. I don't want people to rush, and I don't want people to think I'm rushing, but every hour is what you have to do. I say every hour because I can have a good hour during that time, and then the next 5 hours, I'm in the bed, I'm crying. Because that's how much it hurt. And right now, writing this book, it was so relieving. Because for the first time, and trust me, I was always a believer, but for the first time, I had to rely on God. Not my mother, not my grandmother, mainly the 2 women who raised me for 44 years. This time is just God. Thank you, Greg. Greg is my friend. It's just God. And once we start relying on his promises and everything, it does get a little smoother. Everything that my mother and grandmother taught me, my grandfather, everybody around me who I loved and dear and I miss so much, they taught me to be strong. But God taught me how to be who I am while I'm weak. I was never taught how to to function when I'm weak. But God taught me that. And he's still teaching me that. He said, you're already strong, Aja. But now I'm going to humble you and I'm going to weaken you to rely on me. And I'm still doing it. I still need you to get up, do this, go take your break. Maybe tomorrow pick back up, or maybe tonight pick it back up. But God has taught me how to be when I'm weak.
You know, what's interesting is that we had a conversation in reference to this show last week. And, and I'm just talking to the chat about our conversation. And I thought I was going to bring someone up to you. And I didn't bring her up for a reason. Because sometimes when you're in the public eye, we were talking about, for those in the chat, we were talking about Erica. Sometimes when you're that much in the public eye, she's trying to run an organization and she's still in her grief. And not just using her, but using her for an example is sometimes when you have the celebrity or the famous person, anybody, when they have to grieve in public and you see it, it's like, I know what that person's going through. I can't do nothing for them because I can't touch them. I can't talk to them.
You can't hold them. You can't do anything.
You sharing your journey through a group chat. We're in a group chat together. Made me want to explore you coming on the show and talking about it, because this is something that's dear to me. This is something that I, in spite of what anybody may think like people do, is that we all go through stuff. We all go through grief. You see people go through it. And now I'm in a different space where I see it. And I just think that world and people around are just, a lot of people are hurting.
Yes.
They don't know how to ask for help, and they don't know how to say, yo, I'm hurting. And me, I'll be honest with you. My mom died in 2018. I don't think I've ever grieved it. I've had other people die. I've grieved over a cousin more because it was, like you said, very sudden.
Yes.
And to this day, I'll be like, man, I'm waiting for him to call me and be like, cuz it was all a joke. Like, I was trying to
I'm here.
But I know it's not going to happen. And then, we lost him during COVID and it was out of state. I couldn't get there. And I say that to say that grief has no expiration date and nobody knows what person and how they're going to grieve. And you have definitely.
My grandfather battled cancer for 17 years on and off. Yeah, he even amazed the doctors. So when I deployed, it was right before I deployed, he went back into the hospital because the cancer had now metastasized through his body. So when I deployed to the Middle East, I got the Red Cross notification that my grandfather had died. I said, okay. So my commander at that time, long story short, he told me, tell me about your grandfather. I did. 3-war vet, fought the Nazis, went to Vietnam. I mean, seriously. He was a gunner sergeant, did the Berlin airlift, all this stuff, everything about my grandfather. He was like, wow. He said, well, why don't you take an extended lunch? I said, okay, thank you. So when I got back to my desk, there was a plane ticket. So what's this for? So you can go home, Sergeant Smith, and bury your grandfather, Chief Master Sergeant Hawkins. He said, you have 4 days, 4 or 5 days. And you have to come back. A round trip ticket. And I looked at it, I was leaving in 3 hours. Colonel Arnold. He was one of the best commanders I've ever worked for. Because during that time, his mother was dying. So when I got back, that next day, his mother passed. And he was gone for 2 weeks. He can do that. He's a colonel. And I remember when he got back, it was just him and I at the office. Everybody did whatever, I don't know where everybody was at. And he said, and I went in there, he said, Sergeant Smith, our computer. I was like, okay, let me see. And he looked at me. He said, thank you for teaching me about family. Because he said he was close to his mom and he loved his mom, but he didn't want to go back and bury his mother because he didn't want that pain. Here's a full bar colonel telling an enlisted me. He said, when you told the story of your grandfather and how much he was Mr. Christmas to you and everything else and how much you loved him, that's where I said, I'm going to go see my mother and go bury her. Because he said she was dying too, but he said he wasn't going to go back. He was just going to let his wife deal with everything. And then he'll grieve when he got back from his tour. But he said, what you told me and how much you loved your grandfather he said, of course I love my mother. He said, that's why I let you go. And then he said he was going to go back.
Yeah. And thank you and your family.
Thank you.
With that, we're going to close out. And you guys will see Aja again soon.
Yes.
We might not be conversating about this, but you'll see her soon.
Some different other topics, but grief in the holidays, I want to tell people, put on the favorite music. My mother would put on the Temptations, of course, Mariah Carey, Donny Hathaway. I play it, and I play more music in my house. My mother loved to listen to music and watching old movies. It took me a while to do all of this, but it feels so good. It feels good. And like I said, I just can't wait until Christmas Eve. My cousin's coming. I'm going to see my great aunt for Christmas and my rest of my family. And always remember, you are not alone. You are not alone. It may feel lonely, but you're not alone. Well, I don't have nobody in my house, me either, but guess what? I'm not alone. I refuse to let the memory just fade away. That's why I wrote my book, and I'll be writing more about my family.
With that, take care.
Thank you.